Good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome to today's webinar, or preparatory webinar, for the IPPOSI Patient Education Programme for 2021. My name is Derick Mitchell. I'm the CEO of IPPOSI, and I'm joined today by a very special guest. That's Siobhan Freeney, one of our graduates of the previous programs. And today's webinar's objective is really to answer questions that potential applicants for this year's program may have, but also to give you some, I guess, additional background as to maybe the why and the what of the patient education program. And suffice to say, it's something that we're very proud of in IPPOSI. We've been running it for a number of years, and we've had over 45 graduates of the previous programs go off and do all sorts of things that we probably never even had envisaged in terms of the benefits of using the knowledge that they've gained from the program. So you're all very welcome today, and hopefully we can make this short and sweet, but answer your questions in as great a detail as possible. So today's format is going to be that I'll give a short overview of the program, and all the information is available on the IPPOSI website, and you should be able to navigate to that quite quickly. That's IPPOSI.ie. And there's lots of material there, including a guidance for applicants, as well as some graduate stories from previous years and some videos, and as well as the content from today's webinar. So just to remind everybody that the webinar is being recorded today, and we will be making it available on the IPPOSI website. So if anybody has any concerns about that, maybe you should think about logging off. But I think we have 18 participants on the call, so we'll go straight into business, and we'll give you the background and just a brief overview of the program. So people ask why we ended up doing this, or where this idea came from. And really it was in response to many of IPPOSI patient members, and in terms of their willingness to get involved in the health space in Ireland, be it across health services or health policy or health research, but also it reflected the changing environment in the health sector in Ireland, in that there was an increasing pressure on those providers and those research communities and the funders to involve patients at a much earlier stage than maybe had traditionally been the case. And a lot of these opportunities are increasing in Ireland, but I think it's fair to say that the providers really don't have ready access to a cohort of what we would define as educated patients who have, I think, a familiarity with the kinds of terminology that's often used in the health sector, a familiarity with the agencies that are there, in many cases there for many years, but patients may not be all that familiar with their activities. But I think predominantly that one of the main reasons that IPPOSI is doing it is that we want to see greater levels of involvement, but we want to see meaningful involvement, and involvement that not only happens at an early stage, but it happens at a higher level. So the decision making in the health sector in Ireland acknowledges, I think, fully acknowledges that patient voices need to be heard as part of decision making, but quite often don't have the infrastructure, the mechanisms, the kind of supports that are in place to support patients for these opportunities that are increasingly there for them. So that's really the reason why we created the program, and it was hugely influenced by our involvement in EUPATI. That's the European Patients Academy in Therapeutic Innovation, which this year established its own foundation in the Netherlands. And IPPOSI has been heavily involved with EUPATI since its inception, and continues to be. And I'm currently on the EUPATI board. And really, it was the inspiration that EUPATI provided so that we could use some of the content that was generated at the European level, but to make it much more relevant and contextualized in the Irish health environment. So we've been able to recruit a number of education partners who we have to thank for their continued support and willingness to provide Irish specific content, and also to deliver the 3 modules that we've had to date. And those modules are predominantly around medicines research and development. But over the years that we've been running the course, we've added components around medical devices, good clinical practice, and increasing amounts in our pharmacoeconomics section. So we're changing the content and we're modifying it as much as we can year on year. And suffice to say that under our future plans, we do plan to add significantly more content, and more content that's relevant to the Irish context. So I just want to acknowledge the support of not only our education partners and of the continued support of IPPOSI, but the 2021 program is going to be supported under a Health Research Board grant that's part of the ongoing grant with IPPOSI. And I wish to acknowledge that today. Then just to just remind people that all the information is there on the IPPOSI websites, and the guide for applicants is actually quite comprehensive. It gives I think an idea of the commitment that's required here. But I think it's probably easier to hear about what exactly is involved in the commitment from the likes of Siobhan, who has joined us here today. And maybe if I'd hand over to Siobhan at this stage, rather than hearing me drone on about the program and its benefits, but maybe Siobhan, you could give us a flavor as to maybe the why and the what and the benefits for you of having gone through the program and come out the other side.
Yeah, sure, Derick, thanks. And thank you to Caroline and Mel and Derick for having me here today. I suppose the first thing I had to get my head around was to remember what IPPOSI stood for. You know, so it's the Irish Platform for Patient Organisations in Science and Industry, am I right?
Correct. Well done. It's a mouthful.
So yeah, so there you go. So you know, patient organisations in science and industry. So I suppose my interest in patient advocacy developed after I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in end of 2015. So I had initially a year off work. I have, I suppose, a naturally inquisitive mind, and I started to read up on my own disease area because it wasn't one of the more common ones. In saying that, it's the second most common type of breast cancer. So there was a limited amount of information there, and that kind of prompted me to really dig in and get involved. As a result of that, I met with some researchers in UCD. I went to a couple of conferences. I was, you know, quiet as a mouse at the first one. I kind of started to develop an air of confidence as I went along, but they were hugely, hugely helpful and really, really supportive of just getting patients in and having patient engagement. So I saw then that I had seen the IPPOSI information. I'd heard about it. I didn't apply the first time round. Quite honestly, I thought, you know, wrongly, but I thought that it was, you know, geared totally towards academics and maybe people who had come from a science background or even, you know, retirees from a medical background. I had a completely wrong idea of it. So when it came around again in 2019, I was no longer working. I had taken early retirement, so I had the time to commit to it, which was one thing. But I was, you know, encouraged to apply, and I was really encouraged by one of the previous participants that you know, it would be good. Yes, I would be able for it, and you know, the content was most of the content I was incredibly interested in. There were little bits and pieces that went over my head, but that's okay too. So I would be driven, I suppose, by the fact that I believe that patients are no longer just passive recipients of their care and management. I think, you know, that day is gone, and I think we want an involvement. I think we are more than entitled to be involved right from the get-go. But I think more than that, when you begin to engage on any level with the research community, you sense immediately that they welcome the involvement. You know, so there is a platform there already, almost ready established, that you can, you know, get yourself involved in if there's a willingness or a passion there, you know. So I suppose that really is the why. There, you know, I could thank other people. I was, you know, I'd gone to some of the Breast Predict patient PPI involvement, and they were superb. That's rolled into Precision Oncology Ireland now, and you know, so I had encouragement from them, and encouragement from, as I say, other participants who had taken part in it. And I have no science background. You know, I did Leaving Cert Science. I didn't like physics, so you know, I'm not coming from a very science or medical orientated background at all. I'm a patient with an interest in not just one disease, but other disease areas as well. And I've found really, you know, I would say that we were coached and mentored, and you know, the level of I suppose guidance throughout the course, the level of information and how it was delivered to us. There was always a forum there that you could link into. So at no point did I feel, well, I know that's not true. I think there were times where I did feel a little bit swamped, to be honest. But as I got through it, you know, we had chats amongst ourselves, obviously, and we helped one another out somewhat. But it also, you could take some and you could leave some. I realized that I didn't need to know it all, you know, and that's important because things like pharmacoeconomics, you know, really, really difficult to absorb it, again, if you're not coming from that scientific background. But all in all, I would highly recommend it, Derick. Absolutely. And you know that. I spoke very highly of it as we went along.
Thanks, Siobhan. And it's great to hear just what that experience was like during the course. And maybe, can you give us maybe a couple of flavor of how the course has benefited you since you graduated? Yeah,
the first module was, I suppose, the one that I enjoyed the most. It was the clinical trials module. And, you know, if you're engaging on any kind of clinical trials or research, or you know, or you want to engage on anything like that, you're going to hear an awful lot of the acronyms, and you're going to, you know, be perhaps reading through different papers that have been published. So that was the one that just gave me a wonderful understanding of information that I'd already been taken on board, you know. So I had got into the habit of, prior to the course, I would just scan through and write down to the conclusions. So I'd read the intro and the conclusions, and because I just didn't have an in-depth level of understanding. So I'm by no means expert, and I still have to ask for the lay summaries, and I'm glad to say the lay summaries are available. But that particular module just helped me enormously, you know. Then I would also say the HPRA module, that was hugely interesting, because again, I would have had no idea of what the HPRA were about, or, you know, drug regulation, or, you know, any kind of, I had no idea about technology, or how it was assessed, or how it, you know, or how drugs were made available to the patient community. And I would have thought that, that's an area now that maybe isn't patient friendly, but it's exactly the opposite. you know, they again want patient involvement, and I'm delighted to say that they've opened up a patient forum, and there's a number of us from the last 2 years, I think, involved on that. So again, there's, you know, proof positive that there's room for patients to be involved at all levels, you know. So yeah, it's busy, Derick, you know, it's, I think again, you know, you need to be a little bit selective. Not selective is the wrong word, but you need to, I think, just over time, just hone in on those areas that you really are interested, and those that you can give something to, because there's so much out there, and COVID has opened it up because there's Zoom calls going, you know, you could be on them all day long, every day. You know, you've access to what's going on in the States, you can be involved in conferences abroad. But having done the IPPOSI course gave me the confidence to, I suppose, step up and be involved, be that person that I was, but the confidence to enhance, you know, my participation in other organizations, and being able to say, yes, I did that, and yes, this is what I did, has opened a few doors in terms of allowing me to be more involved, you know, or I mean, just recently I got involved in the Marie Keating Foundation for October Breast Cancer Awareness, and it was the most lovely, really lovely experience, and it was a really, really good campaign, so I'm very proud of that. And also I've started a little, not little, it's growing actually, Lobular Ireland. It's, you know, again, to have the confidence to start a patient advocacy initiative, you know, and to be liaising. I'm the European rep for the European Lobular Breast Cancer Consortium. And just before we graduated last year, I went over to Leuven and spoke at that. Now, I would not have done that prior to having done the IPPOSI, of course. I really wouldn't. And the other thing I think we had, you know, we had some social media, and we had a day where we had, you know, an expert come in and talk to us about putting together a presentation, and, you know, so we had so much support that there was really no excuse at the end of the year for any of us to you know, shy away or to, you know, it was great. It was wonderful. It's fantastic. Plus, can I just say, and I know I talk too much times, but there were 25 of us. We had a number of us well, most of us were from different disease backgrounds. There were parents of children, you know, who had you know, such a vested interest in their children's medical care and medical needs, and we had the most wonderful peer-to-peer support. So I think that is one of the most valuable things for me as well, apart from the learning, which was wonderful, apart from, you know, the information, which again, you know, I've carried with me. I think the friendships really, and the fact that there is a group of us that went through it all together, came out, but we're still in touch, and we know that we're there for one another as well. So that's been amazing, and we meet up all the time at various different seminars and conferences. You see some of the same names. So personally, I'd advise anybody, give it a go. It's wonderful.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan. So the questions are coming in. So, and I know that we've got a certain amount of time to answer them. So some of the questions are directed at myself, and then some at Siobhan. So I'll just take my ones first. So the first question to me is around what the cost of the course and to the participant. The course is free. So so anybody who is accepted on to the course in terms of the application process and the review of the applications would not incur any costs associated with their participation. So I fully accept that it's an e-learning course this year, because in previous years it was there were a number of face-to-face workshops, and those workshops are now going to be conducted online. So I would say that as long as you have a pretty stable broadband connection, that you should be able to complete the course within the time frame that we've identified. Next question to me is around how the content is examined. So through the e-learning website, so the Moodle site that we've created, there are a number of quizzes for each module, and depending on the education partner who is coordinating the module, they may actually do some group exercises and group tasks. So there will be so you will be assessed according to those tasks, but Siobhan, I don't know about you, but how onerous is the assessment?
Well, you know, I think the one thing is that you can fall behind. In doing any course, you can fall behind. You can get snowed in, you can, you know, and other things sometimes take priority, you know. So to try to keep up would be an important thing. And I think you've extended it, Derick, this year to 12 weeks per module, which will really, really help. I think the e-learning really is I mean, we were e-learning for most of it anyway. The workshops will be really well handled. But the quizzes, yeah, the quizzes always made me smile, because, you know, sometimes you got, sometimes you just got through it quite well, and other times you know, and we used to have a bit of a laugh about them. But the sense of relief, I think, when they were done and dusted and move on, you know, was great. But no, they're very doable. They really are very doable, and even, you know, throughout a particular module, you might even see some of the same content, you know, so you're getting the chance to kind of revise almost without knowing it, you know. Yeah, no, I wouldn't shy away from them. They're good.
Thanks, Siobhan. Just to go through more questions flying in. So there's a question here in relation to the commitment involved. So the commitment that we've estimated around the course is, in total, it's about 160 hours, which, give or take, measures out at about three hours per week on average. It's over an 11-month period. So there'll obviously be, as Siobhan has said, there'll be times when maybe you have the time and you get ahead, and then there's other times where maybe you're slightly behind. But overall, that's what it's estimated out at. Depending on individuals, I think that can vary, and I think it's important to acknowledge that not everybody learns at the same rate. Not everybody kind of absorbs information at the same rate. So there could be additional hours in that regard. So I think it's important to state that. In terms of what time the lectures take place, day, evening, or weekend. So the workshops that we're designing with the education partners, it will depend on the availability of the education partners in terms of what those workshops, correct me if I'm wrong, Caroline, but I think they're envisaged as maybe 2.5-hour workshops, something in that period, and that they would be conducted either kind of mid-morning or mid-afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. They're generally speaking during working hours.
Yeah, okay. And those are the 9 online workshops, but obviously any of the e-learning outside of that can take place at people's leisure. Question in from Claire Nocton about is this suitable for anybody who works in a patient organization or a healthcare professional, or both? So the simple answer is yes, and certainly we would actively encourage anybody who is working or a staff member of a patient organization to liaise with your patient organization in terms of not just either finding time to include this in either your work schedule or indeed outside of work, but also to really kind of look at what value and what benefit to your patient group that having somebody as part of the staff with this extra knowledge that maybe you didn't have before, and what benefit the patient group could have. Because certainly I would encourage anybody to look at the video from Brian Lynch of Arthritis Ireland, who was on the same program as Siobhan, really describing some of the benefits for his patient group. And I know that they've since done a huge amount of work led by Brian. So it's, again, an example of that kind of confidence that comes from what I would call just enough education to perform. So then there's other questions coming in here. There was one to Siobhan, I think. So is it doable with a full-time job, Siobhan, do you think?
Yes, it is. Yeah, a number of the participants. I did mention earlier that I wasn't working, but yes, it would be extremely doable. You know, I think you can cover most of the weekly information coming into you. You know, maybe a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, whatever. But it's very doable. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, and with regards to the workshops, I think most people who were working, you know, the companies that they were working for facilitated those hours that were needed to do the face-to-face. So I'm sure that would be the same situation. Okay. My screen has just slightly froze. I don't know, Caroline, is there any additional questions that maybe have come through that I haven't asked? No questions. Can I just add, Derick, that I think, you know, the idea that it's for patients only, I don't know. I mean, certainly that's where I came into patient advocacy. But is it for patients only? I would say that being part of an organisation is a huge benefit. So Claire's question there, you know, is already, I think it's designed for, yes, for patients, but for members of an organisation who are interacting with patients as well, you know. So there's an emphasis on that too. Yes, I should probably emphasize two new elements that we've introduced to this year's programme. One is that the programme is actually open for applications from Northern Ireland, even though the content of the course is actually targeted for patients in the Republic, because an awful lot of our patient groups actually are cross-border. We've opened that opportunity to their members and to anybody who feels that they can, I guess, justify going on an 11-month e-learning course, even though the content is not maybe targeting their jurisdiction. The other element that we're really trying to include in this year's course is we're reaching out to those what you might call seldom heard groups, who from a patient perspective or a patient involvement perspective, I think it's fair to say have not really been heard to date in terms of efforts to include them. So we're reaching out to a number of groups and organizations that maybe haven't been on our direct horizon. Now, IPPOSI has over 105 patient group members, but there are an awful lot more out there who I think would have some degree of interest in the course in terms of the relevance to their community. But we'll certainly be reaching out to them to encourage them to apply in the first case. Yeah, Derick, I would second that hugely, because I was a bit of a lone star, you know, when I made my application. I've been running a blog about breast density, and I'm very passionate about the essential screening that is required for that. But I mean, that is not just, it is me, it is Siobhan Freeney, it is being dense, it is just, you know, that's where it has started, and I've taken it up a couple of levels. But certainly that would apply to me, you know, that patient organisation that, you know, wasn't really being heard is, I think, now being heard. And I was tuned in yesterday to, you know, the Global Heart just
Global Heart Hub, yes, it's run by CRE Ireland. Is that
That's
right?
right, yeah. And they had a wonderful speaker yesterday. So anybody who would be interested in patient education and learning. But she mentioned, and I wrote it down here, the voice of the many, you know, and I think that's what doing the IPPOSI training course gives you, you know, that you become one of the voice of the many. And whether you come from a large organization or a small organization, or, you know, just someone who's passionate and wants to become involved, yeah, definitely. It's and you know, there are very few patient. I don't think there's any other patient training program in Ireland. I don't think that there is.
Not yet, but there are certainly plans to create. So we'd be in touch with a number of groups.
Well, you're well ahead. You're well ahead of the posse on that, you know. So it's great. It's wonderful, and it's available and it's free. So you know.
Okay, so I think that's an excellent point to leave it on. I think that one thing we would encourage anybody to go on, if you have further questions, to go onto our website and to just check out things on IPPOSI.ie. So with that, I think we're over time. So thank you everybody for your involvement, and again, feel free to spread the word about the opportunity to apply. And we look forward to receiving those applications by December 13th. So have a good rest of the afternoon, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.